It's May 26, 2024. Kylian Mbappe is on his way out the door, and Paris Saint-Germain are supposed to be in a panic. They're losing the best player in their history. But that night, Luis Enrique said something that sounded insane. This club will win the Champions League sooner or later. He didn't say maybe or one day if we're lucky. He was sure they would. It sounded arrogant, but here's the part that nobody understood back then. Luis Enrique wasn't predicting a miracle, he was predicting a trade. Because months earlier, Enrique had already told Mbappe the uncomfortable truth.
Michael Jordan cogía de los huevos a todos sus compañeros y se ponía a defender como un hijo de puta. Tú tienes que dar ese ejemplo, primero como persona y como jugador, de ir a presionar. Vas a tener a Cubarsí, vas a ser tú el que marca a Cubarsí y a Ter Stegen. Y te vas a pegar todo el partido presionando a Cubarsí que no avance y presionando a Ter Stegen para que juegue rápido. Y volviendo rápido. ¿Para qué? Para ser un líder.
It was never about how good Mbappe was. It was about what his presence cost the team when the ball wasn't at his feet. And at the end of the video, you're going to see why that warning followed Mbappe everywhere, why it kept resurfacing under different managers, and why PSG's post-Mbappe era became the proof of what Enrique warned us exactly about, and that he was right about Mbappe all along. Before we talk about what Kylian Mbappe isn't, we need to be honest about what he is. On the pitch, Mbappe is one of the best players, and it's not a debate. From the moment he broke through at Monaco, it was clear we might be dealing with yet another great. People talk about Lamine Yamal or other youngsters like they are the greatest teenagers to ever grace football since Messi and Ronaldo, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In his debut first season at Monaco, Mbappe registered 1 goal and 1 assist in 14 appearances across all competitions. Seems like a small margin, but the very next season in 2016-17, he had a breakout campaign recording 26 goals and 14 assists in 44 matches for Monaco, leading them to a Ligue 1 title and the Champions League semi-finals. This was Kylian Mbappe at 18. At 19, Mbappe won the World Cup with France, scoring 4 goals including 1 in the final, becoming only the second teenager to do it after Pelé. He was named the best young player and won the 2017 Golden Boy Award. And from that moment on, Mbappe did exactly what superstars are supposed to do. He scored relentlessly. By the time he left Paris, he wasn't just their star, he was their all-time top scorer, 256 goals. Every season followed the same rhythm. Mbappe was always great for PSG, but that was exactly the problem. When a player does the hardest thing in football with that level of consistency, everything else becomes negotiable. Defensive effort, tactical sacrifice, off-the-ball discipline, those things get reframed as freedom, as management, as the cost of brilliance. At PSG, that logic was taken for granted. Mbappe wasn't just the best attacker, he became the solution to every problem. And to be clear, it worked. 6 Ligue 1 titles, multiple domestic doubles, a Champions League final. But as the managers changed, so did the systems, and so did the partnership Mbappe had to work with. But through it all, one thing remained constant: Mbappe's attitude. Which is why what happened next went almost completely unnoticed. Because beneath the goals, the trophies, and beneath the highlights, a quiet imbalance was growing. PSG were dominant, but never in control. They won matches, but rarely suffocated opponents. They relied on moments, not mechanisms. And while the whole world chose to ignore why, Luis Enrique didn't. On May 7th, 2024, PSG were eliminated from the Champions League. Not by Real Madrid, Manchester City, or even Bayern Munich, but by Borussia Dortmund, a team sitting 5th in the Bundesliga, a team with a fraction of PSG's budget, a team that had no business being in a Champions League final. And yet, over 2 legs, Dortmund kept a clean sheet. PSG hit the woodwork 6 times and just couldn't score. Mbappe, the man that had carried PSG for 7 years, was anonymous. Mats Hummels, a 35-year-old centre-back, completely pocketed him. Every time Mbappe tried to run, Hummels was there. Every time he dropped deep, the passing lanes were closed. The game plan was simple: neutralize the star player and the rest will follow. It worked. But this wasn't a new problem. 2 years earlier, Jamie Carragher had said it plainly after PSG's loss to Manchester City.
I just don't believe teams can carry anybody now. I think if I think of the 3 teams, certainly, let's say the 4 teams who I think one of them will win the Champions League. Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea or Bayern Munich. They do not carry 1 passenger in the team. They're carrying 3. They've got absolutely no chance of winning the Champions League. Paris Saint-Germain, absolutely no chance.
Thierry Henry sitting beside him agreed. If you want to win the Champions League, you cannot defend with 7 players. At the time, it sounded harsh. PSG had the most talented front 3 in football history. How could that be a weakness? But that was exactly the point. When you build a team around superstars who don't defend, you create an imbalance. The midfielders run more, the fullbacks cover more ground. The structure bends to accommodate brilliance until the structure breaks. Against elite opposition, that imbalance got exposed every single time. PSG found out against City, against Real Madrid, against Bayern, against Dortmund. The pattern never changed, the outcome never changed, and Luis Enrique had seen enough. Somewhere during that 2023-24 season, a documentary crew captured the moment Enrique decided to stop pretending. He pulled Mbappe aside, the camera was rolling, and he told him the truth.
Estaba Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan cogía de los huevos a todos sus compañeros y se ponía a defender como un hijo de puta. Tú tienes que dar ese ejemplo primero como persona y como jugador de ir a presionar.
He even invoked Michael Jordan, the greatest winner in basketball history, and Mbappe's idol, just to make his point. Jordan didn't just score, he defended, he set the tone, he did the dirty work. And then Enrique made his real point.
Claro, tú eres un fenómeno, un top mundial, ninguna duda. Pero yo no me vale eso. Un líder de verdad es que cuando no nos puedes ayudar con los goles, porque el otro día tenías a 2 jugadores de alto nivel para ti y no puedes ayudarnos, tú nos ayudas en todo lo defensivo. Coges así y dices, chavales, línea defensiva, quedaros ahí 4, que yo voy a coger a mis 2 compañeros, porque si tú solo presionas, es la hostia. Pero si encima coges a Usman y a Colomwani o a Barcola o a Gonzalo o a Marco Asensio y te pones tú como ejemplo a presionar.
A leader isn't a player who decides games when everything is going well. A leader is the one who carries the team when the things stop working. That was the warning. The thing about stars is they don't just take up space on the pitch, they take up space in the system. It's natural to build around Mbappe. You give him freedom, you let him conserve energy, you accept that he won't press, won't track back, won't do the unglamorous work. Because when the ball reaches his feet, he can do things nobody else can. And that's true, he can. But it also means opponents have a target. Stop Mbappe and PSG becomes predictable. Dortmund did exactly that, and PSG had no answer. After a few weeks of that Champions League exit and PSG's Coupe de France victory, Luis Enrique stood before the cameras for Mbappe's final game. Everyone expected sadness, uncertainty, maybe even panic. Instead, Enrique said this: "He's a different kind of player, a player we can replace. There's no point in looking. It's the team that will replace him. We might have to do it with 4, 5 or 6 new players. We will win the Champions League." At the time, it sounded like a delusion, like a manager trying to put on a brave face on disaster. But Enrique wasn't guessing, he was calculating. Because he understood something that critics didn't. Mbappe's presence wasn't just an asset, it was a constraint. And removing that constraint might be exactly what PSG needed. He preferred 4 players who scored 10 goals over one who scores 40. He preferred a team that presses together over one that waits for a single man to produce magic. He preferred collective identity over individual brilliance. And in 12 months, he would prove every single doubter wrong. The first sign of Luis Enrique's prediction of them being better without Mbappe came against Manchester City. PSG were losing 2-0 at halftime. City dominated. The old narrative was right in itself. Another European collapse, another year of falling short. But something was different. In the second half, PSG pressed like they had never pressed before. Not just the midfielders, not just the fullbacks, everyone. Dembele, Barcola, Doué, the entire frontline hunting in packs, suffocating City's build-up, forcing mistakes. And the result? 4 unanswered goals against Manchester City to eventually win 4-2. And unlike before, this was not a case of a goal from a superstar. Dembele, Barcola, Neves, Gonzalo Ramos, 4 different scorers, 4 players who pressed and tracked back. Luis Enrique stood on the touchline, arms folded, nodding. This was the team he'd been building. What made this PSG wasn't talent. They always had talent. Neymar, Messi, Mbappe, Di Maria, Cavani, the list goes on. What they'd never had was balance. Under Enrique, the numbers told the story. With Mbappe in the 2023-24 season, they had 65.7% possession, registered 15.1 shots per game, and defensively 12.1 shots conceded. Now without Mbappe in the 2024-25 season, the possession was 68.6% possession, 18.6 shots per game, 9.5 shots conceded. More control, more chances, fewer opportunities from opponents. And the reason was simple, everyone worked. Kvaratskhelia, who signed in January for €70 million, didn't just dribble past defenders, he pressed from the front. When PSG lost the ball, he was the first to chase. When they needed to defend a lead, he dropped into midfield. And Dembele, finally fulfilling his potential, ran more than he'd ever run in his career. 33 goals, 11 assists, and defensive numbers that would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. His total trust in Enrique earned him the Ballon d'Or, something Mbappe had been chasing his whole life. And Doué, Barcola, Neves, young players you didn't think PSG would build around. Goals were coming from everywhere. Knockout playoffs against Brest, 7-0. 7 different scorers, first time in Champions League history. Quarter-final against Aston Villa, Doué, Kvaratskhelia, Nuno Mendes. Semi-final against Arsenal, Dembele, Hakimi, Barcola. Opponents couldn't plan for PSG anymore. There was no single threat to neutralize because every player was dangerous. Then came the finals against Inter Milan. It was the day everything finally came to fruition. 12th minute, Hakimi, 1-0. 20th minute, Doué, 2-0. 63rd minute, Doué again, 3-0. 73rd minute, Kvaratskhelia, 4. 89th minute, Seni Mayolu, a 19-year-old substitute, born on the outskirts of Paris, a product of the academy, came off the bench and scored the 5th, 5-0. The biggest winning margin in Champions League final history. 4 different scorers, the youngest starting lineup in a final in over a decade. Doué became the first player in history to be directly involved in 3 goals in a Champions League final, and he was 19 years old. Mayulu became the second youngest scorer in a final ever, and somewhere in the stands, Luis Enrique allowed himself a smile. 1 year earlier, he had told the world PSG would win a Champions League without Mbappe. Everyone laughed, but Enrique had the last laugh instead. The one trophy that mattered the most for the club arrived a year after Mbappe left. Real Madrid bought him with the idea of winning the Champions League too, but the Mbappe paradox continues in Spain. Mbappe has played under 9 different managers in 10 years. That number should tell you something disturbing. But the crazy part is, these aren't nobodies. Unai Emery, Thomas Tuchel, Mauricio Pochettino, Carlo Ancelotti, just to name a few. At Monaco, Mbappe was young, electric. But behind the scenes, Mbappe was once banned from the first team training after an angry altercation with teammate and veteran Andrea Raggi. The pattern continued at PSG. With Tuchel, PSG were really good. The German coach took them to a Champions League final in 2020, something no PSG manager had ever done before. But behind that run was tension. Tuchel wanted discipline, he wanted to press, he wanted accountability, and at moments he wanted to drop Mbappe. Not because of form, but because of the attitude. The club refused. Not only did they refuse, but they also forced Tuchel to apologize to Mbappe. That was the moment the hierarchy flipped. The manager stopped being the authority, the star became untouchable, and Tuchel left soon after, and immediately he won the Champions League with Chelsea. But perhaps the most revealing moment wasn't tactical. It was Mbappe ordering Xabi not to perform a guard of honor. and Xabi obeyed. That's when it's over. He had lost the dressing room. The truth remains that Mbappe scores everywhere he goes. That has never been the issue really. But everywhere he goes, he becomes the unquestioned center, and the same things happen. Managers lose authority, systems soften, responsibility shifts away from him, and eventually the coach leaves. The one exception is France, and it's because international football doesn't revolve around him. The structure is bigger, the shirt is heavier, and when Mbappe is one of many, France shine. But at the club level, when Mbappe is the star, the team collapses under real pressure, and it's happening in real time now with Madrid. Luis Enrique saw it early, others learned it late, and now, after 10 years, 9 managers and countless warnings, the question isn't whether Mbappe is great, the question is whether greatness without responsibility can ever build something that lasts. Luis Enrique didn't bench Mbappe, he didn't attack his talent, he didn't deny his greatness, he questioned the cost when it's not paired with the right attitude for the team. He understood something that most managers are too afraid to say out loud. PSG didn't win the Champions League because Mbappe left. They won it because everyone had to run, everyone had to defend, everyone had to lead. That was the trade Enrique predicted, and in the end, the Champions League trophy answered the argument. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe to our channel, because here we don't just watch football, we study it. See you at the next one.